Off top. All right, all this stuff about Lloyd Howell coming out is kind of disgusting and infuriating, considering the players who have sacrificed and also considering my role in history with unions. We'll get into all of it. Play the music.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.
Welcome to the Domonique Foxworth Show. All right, this is going to be not a fun show, but I'm going to step aside. I think I'm a little bit worked up and emotional, and I'm having a hard time thinking of where to start, so I'll just let you, Charlie, take the reins.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, how about we do it this way?
All right.
I'm going to provide some information. You tell me when to stop because it's something that has been an important fact in a union and a story that you care about. So we are tracking the story that our friend, I'm not even going to jokingly call him a nemesis in this episode. Our friend Pablo Torre broke with Mike Florio about the role of collusion between the NFL owners, the league, and the executive director of the NFLPA, Lloyd Howell, that he broke a couple of weeks ago. It stems back to 2022 after Deshaun Watson was given a 5-year, $230 million guaranteed contract. And very conspicuously, Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, but particularly Lamar in this, even though there are other circumstances around it, we're not given similar guaranteed monies, even though we know that quarterbacks normally set the market and subsequent contracts follow. The NFLPA filed a grievance. This was DeMaurice Smith before Lloyd Howell took over as executive director. Over the next 3 years, Lloyd Howell is put in as executive director of the NFLPA. The ruling on that collusion case was there's not enough evidence. The NFL didn't collude. But here's where it gets conspicuous. Lloyd Howell agreed to confidentiality of this agreement, not sending it to the players, not sending it to the teams and the reps of guys who are still negotiating contracts, and hiding this information from the players.
So it's important, I think, to understand how useful this information would have been, because it demonstrates that the teams were colluding, frankly, and I know the findings didn't find that it was true collusion, but it demonstrates that the teams are working together.
Dude, we know. We had Dean Spanos texting with Bidwell being like, Dino, this is going to help us with our guy about negotiating with Justin Herbert after the Kyler Murray deal.
And of course, Lloyd decides to appeal it after Pablo exposes.
This Tuesday, Lloyd Howell, under fire. There's a change.org petition to remove Lloyd Howell from being the executive director of the PA. Is like, we got to find out who did this. We got to appeal this collusion.
It's all incredibly infuriating because there is a person running the union who seems to clearly have a track record of not necessarily doing business above board, given that he was put out of Booz Allen Hamilton because they were found to have defrauded the government.
The biggest government fine ever, $377 million.
So football is a particularly dangerous game. And I certainly am not looking for sympathy or looking to paint football players as victims. It's a very dangerous game. There are a lot of risks that the players are taking, and they're taking them willingly. And in part of that is because you believe that it is worth it for you. Mm-hmm. And it's not just the current players. It's a long history of players that were willing to do that. And it's also players who are willing to take professional risk in order to make sure that the gains were there for future players. The idea that someone who was not one of those people who had sacrificed nothing at all in this cause would be entrusted with the responsibility of perpetuating this great union and trying to make sure that they can ensure that players get the things that they deserve, would be willing to sign a confidentiality agreement.
Sorry, not to cut you off there. That's a detail we didn't say. He works for Carlyle, the private equity firm, which has been approved to buy 10% stakes in NFL teams as minority owners. So there is a world where the executive director of the NFLPA actually is invested in ownership, where he is actually another employee of the owners, which is what the league and Roger Goodell essentially functions as you would call it, a cartel.
Yes. And the idea that all of the value that's been built up by these people's sacrifice, that someone would come in and sell it down the river for their own personal gain, is the part that really makes me angry. Mm-hmm. And it's also because I think the current players recognize that this is a problem. But like, I know the people. Like I know the people who've put themselves in a worse position in order to put the union in a better position. So there's tons to talk about in here, and there's tons at fault from other people in this conversation also. But I think it's important to be clear why this is so bad. Like it to me, it just feels like selling out. And I don't know how else to phrase it when you're getting paid well and you're looking also to find other ways to position yourself. And none of this, at no point is it even reasonable. And I'm sure at some point maybe Lloyd will make an explanation for why this was supposed to be beneficial, why any of this could have been beneficial. But it's so hard to see how any of this could have been beneficial. It just feels like he's done nothing up until this point that seems like it was directed towards benefiting the players.
I mean, honestly, okay, there's a million questions I have off of this, but a lot of this story hasn't been like extensively covered in a lot of the ways that it should. It's now getting picked up by national outlets, thanks to Don Van Natta, Mike Florio, Pablo Torre, all are doing awesome work on this. And I think it is starting to pick up. If you're a player, if you're a union rep, if you're the president of the PA, is there anything that Lloyd Howell could say? Because like it has been said by lawyers in these articles that at best it's a conflict of interest, at worst it's conspiratorial. Like those are direct quotes. Is there any explanation you can say of like, I withheld this information, I am attached to this private equity firm because of blank, that would be acceptable to you, knowing that there's a modicum of fairness needed to run a union because you guys have short careers. You're over leveraged by NFL owners, and there are things that are really hard to change, and you don't even have a shot. You're behind the eight, like you don't have a shot unless you have like all of your ducks in a row and your leadership on your side.
Yeah, I mean that's the tough part. Is it's hard enough if everyone is working in concert. It's even harder if someone behind the scenes is doing things that makes it more difficult. The funny thing is Lloyd deciding to appeal the case after it went after Pablo got the documents makes it look even more incriminating.
It's crazy.
It's like, all right, so like if there was, and that's why I feel comfortable like
makes you feel like he doesn't give a about you guys.
But I'm saying that him doing that suggests to me that there is no defense.
Yeah.
If there was a defense, that's the time to do it. It's not to do appeal.
Yeah.
Or it's in conjunction with an appeal. It's like, man, we were trying to do this. That's why I'm really upset at this document getting out. I don't understand how you can make that case now, given how you reacted to it and that you've said nothing. And then to the Carlisle point, there is no defense for that.
Yeah.
Because you can argue like, oh, I wasn't involved. You have to avoid. This is why, like, when you're in big, important leadership roles, you have to avoid the perception of a conflict of interest. So even if he could argue like, no, there's a wall, I don't see anything, they don't give me anything, I don't give them anything, it doesn't matter. Like whatever money they were paying you is not your first responsibility. The idea that a private equity firm that is interested in becoming part owner in NFL teams has access to the guy who's supposed to be running the union is insane.
And to be fair, I'm going to protect you on this. Carlisle has said that there are, information passing things that are blocking him from having information about this. Obviously, it seems ridiculous. They claim to not know that a union rep asked him to step down from Carlisle as well.
Yeah, I recognize that. I read that in the article too. I don't care.
No, detector, obviously.
I mean, but whether it's true or not doesn't matter to me.
Yeah.
Like it could be true. The point is that whenever in some leadership roles, there are some things that you just can't do. You just have to give it up. Like you can't make money on the side if you're the leader of the union, at least not like that.
And so this is, by the way, we now know he makes, it's been reported $3.4 or $3.6 million from being the head of from being the executive director of the NFLPA. So it's not like he needs the side hustle necessarily. I mean, I know he's probably an ambitious person, but also I want to ask you about like what it takes to run one of these and how you have to be selfless with this, because it's largely intimated that the reason he wanted confidentiality on the findings to begin with from the arbitration was because it showed the shady process by which he became the executive director of the NFLPA, which was that essentially J.C. Tretter hand-selected him and didn't go through an honest process to give the best representation for the players. J.C. Tretter is a former center for the Browns who has aspirations of being the executive director himself one day, and he thought that Lloyd would be a placeholder guy till he got in there. that tracks very similarly with the Carlisle stuff of being like, I'd like to hide the information because it benefits me, and I don't want other people to know that this information that benefits me is out there. When you see that, is there any way, I'm not saying like about his honesty, but if those are your instincts, if your instincts are to protect yourself over the larger group of players that representing, does that alone make you unfit for the job?
You're asking questions that you already know the answer.
I'm leading the witness here.
Yeah. I mean, yes, obviously it does. And I think believing that there is someone who is 100% benevolent is probably a mistake. So I get that. It's the responsibility of the players to hold them accountable. But I also think that hiring
an outsider.
Yeah, I don't. So like D was an outsider.
Yeah.
When we hired D, but I do believe that there are checks and balances there to ensure that those things. I'm not arguing that anyone is better or worse, but I do know that there are things that you have to be aware of. And a guy who came from where he came from, it's hard to he
was a trial lawyer.
Yeah.
He was a fighter.
No, I'm not talking about D now, but like Lloyd, like a guy with that background, of course there are going to be some red flags. It's not to suggest that he can't do it, but you should be extra vigilant about someone because unions are different, man. Like it's not running a business. There's something else about being a part of a union that's different. And I'm sure it sounds like me as a former union leader is like being a little grandstandy about this, but no, like they actually are. There's a value to the unions and there's not a profit motive. Like there's a different motive. I think it's probably more akin to nonprofit than it is. I mean, it is technically a nonprofit, but like the leadership of a union is much more closely aligned with that than someone who's looking to maximize profit.
Yeah. I mean, it's I guess in theory, a nonprofit that wants to maximize profit for its members.
Well, I mean, you're measuring by your outcome. Your outcome is the satisfaction of the members. It's not the amount of money that you put in your pocket.
That's exactly right. And also, it's particularly, I feel like you have to be, I'm not going to say like altruistic because it's not about that, but like necessarily, but the NFL is unique because of the range of outcomes of these players and how cognizant you have to be to the different financial standings of this stuff, which is something that I know that where like the vast majority of players are either on rookie deals or cost controlled, similar rookie deals. The careers, I mean, like people have reported they're 3 years or 5 years, whatever. It's not the type of thing that we're seeing in other sports right now. And there are simply more players that you have to represent, and you have to represent like a larger constituency. And like, I mean, you can speak to this, how much that means to you, how much that like changes it changes everything for people. And the union is responsible for a lot of players being in position to change their lives.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's important. I also think that what's made this even worse is that it is a setback for the union because, as you know, union strength is drawn from its solidarity. And I think you hear so often when players talk about the NFLPA, they say them and they and call it the PA.
Interesting.
And it's sad because you are the union, the players are the union. And what I mean
I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be like an upside down triangle where the guy who is executive director is at the bottom. Like he works for you. Right? Yeah, he works for you. The people who run it is supposed to be the members. And you hear so often that they separate themselves. And I get it. I understand why. And you can only feel more separated now.
Why? Not now. I mean, now I get it, but I'm saying in the past, and you understand why? Because what?
Because I think it's because a lot of times the outcomes are not something that they're happy with, and the communication, they don't feel connected. It's the hardest thing to do with a disparate population and young guys that are coming in or going out. It's a hard thing to make them feel connected, but that's the job.
Yeah.
Like that's the responsibility. And let me finish with this particular point is they didn't feel, or a portion of them didn't feel connected before. That's why this is so upsetting to me, because this is another strike at that. This is another point where it's like the players are going to feel like we can't trust them or they aren't us. And that is not going to help anybody in the long run. But like, I don't know what I would feel the same way. And I'm not arguing that they should feel differently. I would feel the same way in that situation.
How much do you think this is framed by the way that this is talked about, like online or with social media becoming a part of this? Not to say it's everything, because I'm sure this has been going on since you were a player, but people talk about the NFL PA being like the least powerful professional sports union. And that's often pitted against Major League Baseball, which people think is like one of the most powerful unions in the country, period.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it certainly frames it. It's an oversimplification that I know that I don't necessarily agree with, but it's hard to argue in defense of the NFLPA today. But I think that's an oversimplification. But I think you're right. Like the current state of affairs it's very difficult to get consistent communication with the players, where a lot of influence is made from how the rest of the world feels about the union, and the rest of the world doesn't feel good about the union and feels even worse about it right now.
Yeah. And so I think it was 79% of players voted in the last executive director election. So it's like it's I know it's a 1,500-ish, 1,600-ish player pool, and you want that number to go up, where you can control that. You have union reps to help that along the way.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the instinct of the leadership in any situation to try to consolidate power and have fewer voices, and I think it always backfires. Like you can have the small fight now when you disagree with somebody, or you can have the big fight later when you disagree with everybody. And I think often, to avoid the small confrontations, leaders, and it's not just unions, are looking to make their circle tighter and tighter and tighter, which inevitably blocks people out. And the people who are blocked out in this situation are people who ultimately have the final power, and it just sucks. I hate it.
Yeah, I mean, like we've done the show for years. I've never seen you like this frustrated about the topic.
I'm frustrated. I don't feel like I'm getting my point across clearly, but it infuriates me for the reasons that we talked about. Like, this is important to me, and I care deeply about this organization and the people that it represents.
Can I ask you a couple questions about pushing it forward?
Sure.
Because is there any part of this? Okay, so first of all, this has been bantered about. Do you see a class action lawsuit coming from the class of 2022 free agents for garnished wages that were unfairly taken from them?
Absolutely.
Is that directed at the NFL or the NFLPA or both?
Yeah, I think it's directed at both.
Yeah.
Like, I would be surprised if that opportunity is not taken by someone. Like, I think it's 590 players that fall into someone will take it and other people will sign on, and yeah, they'll do that.
That's actually really interesting, and I'm looking at it now, and the NFLPA has actually been sued by its players a few times. Colin Kaepernick and Eric Reed, NFL retirees, have sued the NFLPA. McNeil versus the NFL. It was the beginning of free agency. The NFLPA was a part of this, and like, it's really interesting about that. And I wonder if there's something with this as we push it forward, where if you're the players beyond the union, I know this is the most important part about getting like Lloyd Howell out of there and a real executive director in there, is there any opportunity for leverage of this, where contracts are going to be different? Like, players are going to be able to go to owners negotiating their next deal, being like, we know you colluded against us. Like, if it is, you're laying it bare if you're going to do it to us again in our face as we're suing you in a class action lawsuit about this.
I think the sad part is there was an opportunity to gain some leverage. It doesn't mean that it's completely gone, but the leverage that you could have gained feels like that energy and momentum is shift towards like more distrust of the union. So I think players will obviously, on an individual basis, try to use this as a way to create some leverage. If they are willing to cooperate and work together, that's another question altogether, which I think is going to have to stem from some sort of real leadership in the union.
Well, what's that look like? Because like let's just say it is one player. Let's say it's like one person who's like, I want F this. I know you colluded against me. I want a fully guaranteed contract. I'm a young MVP quarterback. Is there a way the union can get behind that person and be like, this is a watershed deal? Like, F you NFL owners, make this deal, and this is what contracts look like moving forward. Because we generally, if there's one of these things and it's not like an ill-gotten gain like Deshaun Watson, it's a watershed. It's a contract setter for things moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are plenty of things that the union can do to get behind a player like that. I mean, the first thing is share the information.
Yeah.
It's the first thing that you could do. The second thing is you need to get together a group of players. And so I think the question that you have to shift the pressure, and it's a hard thing to ask. It's like you're asking one player maybe to make it clear that he's not going to show up, and that player might have to sacrifice a year of his career. And you're putting the opposing owner in a position where he's like, all right, do I stand with my group of owners and sabotage my season or my chance and have whatever backlash that comes from this? Or do I go ahead and sign this deal? The funny thing is, if it's a quarterback, the owners already know that whether the deal is guaranteed or not, the deal is kind of guaranteed.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks get all that money. So do I stand on principle in order for me to go back into my owners' meetings and not get yelled at by these other owners, or do I make this decision? That's a tough decision for that owner to make, obviously. That decision is made even more difficult if there are a number of quarterbacks or players who say, we are all standing together in this, because then it's like, all right, this is futile. They are going to stand together. And this is back to the point of strength and solidarity. Everything comes from being able to credibly threaten, because you won't actually have to miss a year of your career if the threat feels credible. The threat feels credible from a strong union. Mm-hmm. The threat doesn't feel credible from a union that's fractured and is headless at this moment.
So what's step one? Step one is Lloyd, JC, out the paint, get out of here, never get near a football field again, banned for life. And then it's find a real executive director.
I mean, I think it's a long process, honestly.
There's no way of getting the players together and
I think agents have the ability to do something like that. Obviously, the players have the ability to do something like that, but I do think that whatever happens, it has to be player led.
So long term, more damaging, because we now have information that should be very damaging to NFL owners and negotiations with players. We have that. Thank you to Pablo Torre. We know exactly what they were saying. In theory, that should be damaging to the NFL owners. But is this more damaging to the PA because of how it's fractured something that was like a very professionally run union that was like the last vestige of fairness for its constituents?
Given what was happening there, I think they're better off without the leadership. What happens after that can't be any worse.
Yeah.
I think it's probably worse for the NFL.
Yeah,
because
that's what I thought too.
Yeah, they're losing their buddy,
their inside source.
Yeah, they're losing the guy who was willing to collaborate with them, and what the future holds is uncertain. So I think it's hard to imagine a situation where the union is in a worse position.
Can you remember a bigger inflection point for players in a union like this? I know there have been strikes, there have been lockouts, but this feels like a genuine inflection point for how labor is going to be negotiated for NFL players in a really unique way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about comparing it to other inflection points, but to your point, strikes, the Reggie White lawsuit, I think is a big one. I think the replacement players was a big inflection point. Those are huge inflection points. Yeah, I do think that this is going to be a inflection point to us pointing back to I hope this was the point when the NFLPA and the active players retook their union. And it's going to take time, but inevitably get to a point where they aren't pointing to the union saying they really feel like the person that is leading the union works for them in a way that it hasn't felt. Thanks for being my therapist. I feel slightly better now. All right. Thank you, Charlie. Thanks to all the great producers. Pavel, we love you. I'm out.
This is the Domonique Foxworth Show.